Hi there, my name is Michelle, and welcome to Introduction to Excel. I'll be demonstrating today on Excel 2017 for the Mac, but all the concepts in this class are appropriate for not only the Mac version, but also for different versions of Excel for Windows. Most of these concepts are also appropriate for Google Sheets. So sit back and relax and enjoy learning Excel. The data files for this class can be found on my website at mtcweb.co/excel. So here's what we're going to be covering in this lesson. We're going to go over an overview of Excel. We're going to show you how to navigate around and find things in Excel, how to select and enter data, both text and numbers, and how to save a workbook. We're also going to show you how to move and copy data between cells. We're going to fill cells with series of data, edit that data, and insert and delete cells, columns, and rows. We're going to create basic formulas and functions. We're going to copy those formulas and functions and talk about what an absolute reference is versus a relative cell reference. We're going to talk about formatting a worksheet to make it look nice, including changing the font size and type, the column width and row heights, and applying different number formats. We're also going to talk all about printing both simple spreadsheets and more advanced spreadsheets, and this can be one of the most frustrating things about working with Excel. So we're going to talk about margins, headers and footers, page orientation, and printing print ranges. To download the data files to this class, please go to mtcweb.co/excel. Click on the Download Excel Level 1 Class Data Files button. This will open up a Dropbox folder, and it will show you all the different data files in there. In the upper right, click on Download and Direct Download. This will download a zip file to your Downloads folder on your computer. You can go to that zip file, which looks like this, and double click on it, which will extract these into a folder. You can work with the Excel data files folder within Downloads, or you can drag it to your desktop, which might be easier. Then whenever you are working with these folders and files, you can simply go to your desktop to find them. The first thing we're going to talk about is sort of an overview of Excel and some things that you could find in the toolbars and how to change the view, and then we'll dive right in and talk about entering data and working with a general spreadsheet and entering your data and doing some calculations. Up here at the very top you have your navigation bar. This is universal with the Windows and Mac programs, and in the Mac program you have this Excel menu, which you won't have in Windows, but you will have File and Edit and View and all of these other menus. You'll find when you're working in most computer programs that menus will change depending on what you're doing. So don't be surprised if you have different options show up in different places when you're working with spreadsheets. Down here is another set of menus. You've got Insert, Page Layout, Formulas, and within each of these you have some different options as well. And we'll be going over quite a few of these as we work our way through. Between the top level menu bar and this menu bar, you have this little quick bar. And this is a little customizable bar. It's called the Quick Access Toolbar. I'll talk about that later, but I just wanted to point it out. Down here we have our navigation window. It tells us what cell we're in. Right now we're in cell A1. I'm going to click on different cells and you can see it actually shows you where you are in the spreadsheet when you click on it. This comes in handy later when we're working with formulas and having to identify the individual cells that we're going to be using in a formula. Also, we have the formula bar here. This is where the information will show up as we're typing it in, and this is a little function box which we'll be dealing with when we start doing some calculations. Most of the time today we're going to be working in the home menu. Notice when I click it once it collapses that, and if you click it again it expands it. This is really helpful to get things out of the way if you need some extra room on your spreadsheet, but most of the time we'll be working with this as it's expanded. But at any time, if you accidentally click up here and it disappears, just know that you can click again and it will show back up. Okay, so we're going to dive right in and start talking about working with a spreadsheet. We're going to do a very small spreadsheet right now, so I'm going to take advantage of the fact that we are only going to be using a small block of cells, and I'm going to zoom in, which will allow you to see what I'm typing more easily. You can zoom in a couple of different ways. I'm going to go up here to the View menu, and in the View menu you can click on Zoom, and you can choose different ways of zooming. You can zoom to 200%, or you can go View, Zoom. You can zoom back out to 25%, which makes it really small. We wouldn't want that. Most of the time you'll be dealing with 100%. But another quick way is in the lower right hand corner here, you'll see at the very bottom it says 100%. I can click on that and that will also bring up the zoom box. Or I can go down here to this little scroll bar. The little zoom button allows me to zoom in or out. So this is a really handy way to just quickly zoom in and out. So for right now, I'm going to just zoom in a little bit so you can see it easier. I have this in a demonstration file, but if you want to follow along with me, this will give you some good exercise in how to type in some information in the cells. We're just going to start by typing in a simple little shopping list. I'm going to give it a title. Notice when I'm typing, not only is it showing up here in the formula bar, it's showing up here in the cell, and when I press enter, it locks that information into the cell. If I click back on the cell, I can see what's happening up in the formula bar. This will come in handy later. I'm going to just put some things in here. All I'm doing is pressing enter. Enter is taking my little selection box here. You can see I have a highlighted box with a little square in the lower right hand corner. That's something I call the handle, and we'll work on that later. So I'm just simply typing this in. I'm going to come over here and put price. I'm going to do the amount. Okay, simple little sheet, simple information here, and we're going to talk about a couple of different things. So when you type in text, just random letters, it will always come in as left aligned. You can adjust these. I'll talk about formatting later, but just know that every time you type in just regular text, it comes in left aligned. Here though, we have our prices. Right now it's putting in a number format. Number format's super easy, but since we're dealing with actual prices, it would be nice to have the dollar sign show up. I'll show you a real simple way, and then I'll come back and talk about doing different formatting. When you're working in Excel, when you want to change something, you need to select it. Now in this case, it would be kind of silly to have to select each individual cell to format all of these as what's called currency format. So I'm going to drag and highlight and select the cells. When you highlight something, it's waiting to be changed. So I've highlighted this. Now I'm simply going to come back up here, click on this little number format dollar sign up here, and voila, it gives us the price that we want. Super easy. And we'll come back and talk about different options here. And we've set our amount. So now we want to simply do a total. and so we can figure out how much all of this together would cost. To add things up, we have a wonderful little option called the sum command. This is a formula that we can use that's super easy to do. I'm going to click in the cell where I want the result of my formula to appear. You will hear me say this phrase over and over and over again. So I'm clicking where I want the total of all of these prices to appear, and I'm going to come up here to this little sum command. This looks like a Greek letter. For those of you who were in a fraternity or sorority, you might recognize this. This is the sum command. I'm going to click on that, and this sum command is really smart. The first thing it does is it looks directly above it to find if there is a consecutive range of cells that could be added up. So in this case, it zoomed right up and it grabbed all of the number formatted cells above it. The formula looks like this: equal sum B4 through B8. And this is the format that they'll be using whenever we deal with the sum formula. We could have typed this in, but we're simply going to use this little sigma sign, the sum function, to add this up for us. So it's super easy to do. We have, it's now highlighted, and we're going to press enter. Real simple. The nice thing about the sum formula is now if we go up here and we decide the price is different, like $1, it will automatically update these for us. So that is the whole purpose of using spreadsheets, is the ability to type in information and have these calculations update for us. So just to practice again, I'm going to click here. I'm going to do a total amount here. Again, I'm clicking where I want the result of the formula to appear. I'm clicking on the sum sign. It's really smart. The first thing it does is look directly above it to grab the next consecutive series of cells that could be calculated. In this case, it is cell C4 through C8, and we're pressing enter. Real simple. So that's the sum command. You use that quite often, over and over and over again. Now, to calculate over here, let's say we want to calculate the subtotal of how much each of these types of produce would cost based on the amount. So if we want to figure out how many or how much 2 bananas cost at $1 a piece, we can do a little formula here. I'm clicking again where I want the result of my formula to appear. Now, would it make sense to use the sum formula? Well, sum only refers to addition. It's simply the adding of 2 or more cells. So in this case, we're not trying to add $1 plus 2. We're trying to multiply this times this. So that's why we need to figure this out. So to begin any formula, you always start with the equal sign. So I'm going to type in the equal sign. And in this case, we're simply going to multiply the information in cell B4 by the information in cell C4. The multiplication sign is the asterisk. If you hold down your shift key and hit the number 8, that will give you an asterisk. And then we'll click on the amount in cell C4. So what this is saying is give me whatever information is in cell B4 and multiply it by whatever information is in cell C4. When we're done with the formula, we're going to press enter. Really easy. Now, just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to walk through that again on the next one. I always start off my formulas with an equal sign. I'm going to select the first cell. I want the price multiplied by using the asterisk key, the amount, which happens to be in cell C5. Very easy. So that way, if any of these prices change, it will automatically update the subtotal, which is a very nice thing. That's the whole reason for using spreadsheets. Now, let's pretend that this shopping list was 275 things long. We wouldn't want to have to go through and do our individual formulas for each time. We want to calculate the price times the amount. So what's wonderful is Excel has designed a very easy tool to help us fill in formulas in a range that's logical for this particular spreadsheet. So in this case, we simply want to use this exact same formula all the way down here. We want to go have it be here and here and here and here, and that will give us the information that we need. So the way to copy something in Excel, the easiest way, is to select the cell that you want to copy from, and then we're going to copy to a consecutive range of cells, so the cells right next to it. The easiest way to do this is with my little cursor here. It looks like a plus sign. My cursor is designed, or it's zoomed in right now. I have made it larger so you guys can see it. When you're working in your Excel sheet, your little plus sign will not be as large. Regardless, we're going to use it to do what's called grabbing the handle. When I rest my cursor on the lower right hand corner of that cell, in fact, if I zoom in a little bit more, you can really see it. It looks like this little tiny box at the lower right hand corner. And when I rest my cursor on it, it changes from white to black. When I hold down on it, it's going to allow me to drag and copy this information. Isn't that cool? We're going to ignore this right now. But all I did, I'm going to hit undo. The undo command is up here. We can either do edit and undo, or we can use this little rounded arrow to the left, that is undo. Undo will undo the last few things that we did. So if I click once, it's going to undo that one. If I click it again, it's going to keep undoing everything that I did. I zoomed in. So notice that it keeps zooming in and out because that's what I did earlier. This is the redo arrow, the little one to the right. You can also get to redo under the edit menu. We have undo and redo. Anyway, so again, I'm clicking on the cell that I want to copy it to. I'm going to grab that handle in the lower right hand corner, hold down my mouse and drag down. And voila, here are all the formulas. Now, how do I know that these formulas are correct? Well, the way to see the underlying formula in any particular cell that has a formula is to click on it and look up here in the formula bar. Or if you double click on it, it will show you exactly the cells that it's using for the calculation. It even color codes it for you. I'm pressing enter, and if I double click again in another cell, you can see exactly the cells that it's referring to. So you've done some good work to this, so now we're going to save the document. It's really important that you save every, I don't know, 10-15 minutes. Basically, you want to save after you do anything really significant, because if the power goes out, you're going to lose it. So we're going to save this. The first time you save this particular document, it doesn't matter if you hit save or save as. Under the file menu, you have those two options. I'm going to hit save as. And I had actually already saved it. I was being sneaky, and I saved it. I called it shopping list, and I saved it into a folder called Excel data files. You can save it wherever you want on your particular computer, doesn't matter. And I'm going to hit save. And if I have already saved a document with the saved name, it's going to warn me. It's going to say, hey, do you want to replace this? And in this case, I do. Now, as we're moving forward and as you add more things to this, you're going to want to use the save command quite often. An easy way to get around having to go through the whole file save process is this little icon. It looks like a floppy disk. For those of you who are old enough to remember what floppy disks look like, this is that little icon, the save icon. So at any time you can click on save and it will automatically save that for you. Okay, now we're going to take a couple of these concepts a little bit farther with a little bit larger spreadsheet. I'm going to open up that spreadsheet. I'm going to go to File and Open, and I'm going to navigate to the folder on my computer that has this particular spreadsheet in it that I want. In your case, you're going to need to go to your particular folder. I believe I've called it Excel Data Files. So on my Mac, my Excel Data Files comes up here. And we're going to find and open the income and expense spreadsheet. So if I click once, I can click once and click on Open, or I can simply double click it and it will open up. Now you're going to have two different windows on top of each other, which is fine. It will look slightly different if you are in a Windows environment versus a Macintosh environment, but it's the same idea. You can also jump back and forth between your two worksheets using the window menu. Up at the top there, the window menu shows you the different spreadsheets that you have open. I happen to have two shopping lists open. In my case, I'm just going to go back to this income and expense. I'm going to rearrange this particular file so that everybody can see it really nicely. I'm simply making the window a little bit bigger by dragging at the lower right hand corner. I'm resizing this window. And here we are with a worksheet called Income and Expense. I'm also going to do what I did before, which is zooming out a little bit so you guys can see this better. Okay, so because I didn't want you to have to do a lot of typing, I've simply put together a little spreadsheet here with some random numbers. I've put my little titles here on the left and some numbers here on the right. Very simple. And we're going to work out some easy calculations. So in this case, I'm trying to figure out my income and expense for January. And in this case, I have two kinds of income. I've had a very nice January. So here I need to get the total income. So we're simply adding up these two commands. We're going to use our very wonderful little sum option. Remember that sum function that we talked about? So I'm clicking in the cell where I want the result of the formula to appear. I'm going up here to this little sigma sign, the sum command. I'm clicking that. The computer's smart. It's looking for the next series of consecutive numbers that can be added up. It's grabbing those. In this case, it's in cell B8 and B9, and I'm just pressing enter to put that in there. That way, if I change these numbers, again, it will automatically update these totals. Now we have our expenses, and they're all in an area here. We're going to total up our expenses, the exact same thing as we did before. We're going to click here, and we're going to total this information up. Now what's going to happen is this is going to show how extremely smart this spreadsheet is. I'm clicking in the cell where I want the result of the formula to appear. I'm coming up to the sigma sign, and it's grabbing the next consecutive range of numbers that can be added. Now this is super smart. Remember I said it's the next consecutive range. So when it hits a blank cell, it stops. Or even if it hit a cell that had a formula in it, it would stop. It grabs only the numbers that are just simple numbers to be calculated. You can see that these are the correct numbers that we want, and we're pressing enter. Super simple. Okay, now we're going to do a formula by hand. In this case, we want to figure out our overall total. So we're going to take our income minus our expenses and give us an overall total. Really simple. So we're going to start off our formula. Again, we're clicking in the cell where we want the result of the formula to appear. We always start off our formulas with an equal sign, and we are going to type this in just like we did with that multiplication, but this time we're going to use the subtraction one. We want to take the total income, which is up here in cell B10. So I'm just clicking there. And we want to subtract the expenses. So we're just putting a dash for the subtract sign. Coming down here to total expenses, and it's showing us color-coded that we are doing the correct thing, income minus expense. I'm pressing enter, and there we go. Okay, now is when I want to introduce the idea of not only worksheets, but worksheets and workbooks. Every time you work in Excel, you are working on individual worksheets, but you can combine individual worksheets into a workbook, and you can have almost unlimited workbooks. I'm sorry, worksheets within a workbook. I can't remember exactly how many is the max, but trust me, you'll never even come close. So the individual worksheets are a kind of a two-dimensional thing. You've got like 8,000 something cells to work with, but you can also have workbook or worksheets within your workbook. In this case, we have some worksheets already created. I have the January tab here. Here's another worksheet that I've put together for you. I'm going to change the zoom so you can see it better. And March, the same thing. I've created these already. So let's just practice what we did before. So in January, we did our total income, total expenses, and overall total. We'll do the same thing here with February. I want the February total income. I'm going to click where I want the result of the formula to appear. I'm going to use my little sigma sign. It's super smart. It grabs the nearest adjacent cells and press enter. Oops, I'm hitting escape. I accidentally clicked where I didn't want to be. I'm clicking on the total expenses, hitting my sigma sign. Again, it grabs the nearest adjacent range of cells and pressing enter. And I actually had the overall total in here, but just to practice, I'm going to hit equals total income minus total expenses. So you can see the exact cells we're working with, and I'm pressing enter. And now we can change any of these, and the entire thing will change to reflect the new numbers within these range. Let's do it one more time. In the March category, I'm going to do my total income, my total expenses, and my overall total equals the total income minus the total expenses. Super simple. So it's really nice. We can actually add these up and have these across our individual workbooks. Really easy. So we're going to go ahead and save it. The easiest way to do this is, like I mentioned before, we're just going to click on this little save icon. It looks like a floppy disk. It looks like nothing happened, but it is saved. So we're going to just leave this for right now. In fact, we can close it out. In a Macintosh, in the upper left-hand corner, you click on the red X button. There's also an X button in the upper right-hand corner of your document if you are working in Windows, or you can go to the Excel window. Actually, the file menu, sorry, file menu, and click on close. That will close out the current workbook. But the easiest thing in this case is just to click on the X. If it wasn't saved, it would have told me. So I'm going to move this back over here so you can see. Okay, let's come back to our shopping list and do a little bit more work with the shopping list. We're going to figure out some other things here about this list of produce and how much it costs. We want to calculate the tax. So I'm going to do tax, and then we're going to do a total column here. Now, the tax rate is different for different counties. So I'm going to come down here and just type in tax rate. And I think in Vista it's 8.25% or something like that. So I just typed it in, 8.25, and when I type the percentage in, it will actually understand that that is a percent. I could also type in 0.0825 and format it as a percentage, but we'll come back to that later. So I'm just typing in 8.25%. Super simple. Okay, so to figure out what the tax is, I'm going to come over here where I want the result of my formula to appear. And I need to take the subtotal of each piece of produce or each type of produce and multiply it times the tax rate. So I'm starting here. I'm starting with my equal sign, which is how we begin all formulas. And I'm saying I want this subtotal and I want to multiply it by the tax rate, 8.25%. So you can see right here, the color-coded, everything looks beautiful. Okay, so here's 33 cents is our tax on that $4, which is great. Okay, so I mentioned before that you can copy by dragging down the handle when you have a situation like this where you want similar formulas to appear. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to click back on that formula. Again, we can look at it up in the formula bar here. I'm going to go down to the lower right hand corner of that cell. I'm going to grab that handle, so I wait till my little plus sign turns black. I hold the handle down by holding the mouse down. I drag down and I let go, and oh no, what happened? Well, this is where we are going to introduce the concept of absolute versus relative formulas. I'm going to step back here. So when we're dealing with a situation like adding up a subtotal, if I click on this one, it will show you what you're essentially telling the computer to do is take this cell 2 to the left of me and multiply it by the cell 1 to the left of me. And that is appropriate as we go down. In this case, take the cell 2 to the left of me, multiply it by the cell 1 to the left of me. So in each case, this cell simply adjusts relative to its new position. So when I copy this formula down, it's simply saying adjust the row. I'm copying it down one row at a time. So B4 times C4 turns into B5 times C5 when I copy it down one row. It's adjusting relative to its new position. Same thing here, B6 times C6. So this is copying relative formulas. Watch what happens in this case. I double click here and I'm saying take the cell to the left of me and multiply it by the cell down over here in cell B11. Okay, that works the first time. But watch what happens when I go here. It's saying take the cell to the left of me and multiply it by the next cell down because I copied it down one row. So each time I look at this, notice it's going down one row. It's adjusting relative to its new position. It's being copied down one row at a time, so it's adjusting the formula down one row at a time. Well, how do we stop this? Well, first of all, back up in this case, again, we're saying take the cell to the left of me and multiply it by the tax rate in cell B11, okay? So in this formula, we also want to say take the cell to the left of me, but we want to lock in the fact that it's always going to multiply by cell B11. It's not going to go down one to B12. So the way to lock this in is to create an absolute formula. So I'm going to come back here to my original formula and double click on it. The way to lock in an absolute cell is to use dollar signs. I'm going to put a dollar sign in front of the B and a dollar sign in front of the 11. What that is telling the computer is to take the cell to the left of me, but to absolutely always multiply it by cell B11. So no matter where I copy it to on this spreadsheet, it will always be correct. So I'm going to do this. I've put that in there. Now I'm going to grab the handle at the lower right, drag and highlight, and it works. Let me show you what happened. I'm double clicking. It's saying, this case, take the cell to the left of me, but then absolutely always multiply it by cell B11. Same here by B11. Here by B11. So I'm locking in that particular formula so that it does not adjust relative to its new position. The first reference does. Every time we go down, it goes to D8. It goes to D9, but it locks the second reference down. So that is a very, very important thing to understand when you're working with spreadsheets, the idea of locking those things in relative to their position. So I will give you some other examples of this. I know some of your heads might be exploding right now, but I promise you this becomes easier. So now to get the total of all my bananas here, I'm going to click here where I want the result of the formula to appear. I want to add up these two cells. Now, if I were to hit the sigma sign, watch what happens. It goes and grabs the nearest range of adjacent cells that have numbers in them or formulas. So in this case, I did not have cells above this one. It will always look first above the cell that it's in, and then it will look to the left. So in our case here, the sum formula doesn't really work very well, but we can easily adjust this. It's trying to grab all of these cells, but we only want these two. So if you'll notice in the upper left and lower right of this blue and what I call the dancing ants, it looks like it's a selection, the little blue moving marquee it's actually called. I can adjust that. So I'm going to grab the handle here at the lower left hand corner and drag it back, and watch what's happening to the formula as I drag. It's saying now only take these two cells. You can always, when you're in a formula, adjust the cells by dragging the highlight. So in this case, I just want these two. So I could do that again. I can hit the sigma sign here. And in this case, watch what happens. Remember I said it always will look to the nearest adjacent range of cells that it can calculate, but it starts going up first. So in this case, it's not correct. I could stop and start over again, or notice how this is highlighted. When anything is highlighted in a computer, it's waiting to be changed. So I don't have to type anything. All I have to do is drag the two cells that I actually want, and I'm pressing enter. Now again, I didn't need to do that. I did that just to give you an example. What I really should do, I'm going to delete this cell, is just simply put the formula in the first time. That is correct here. Press enter, click back on it, grab the handle at the lower right hand corner and drag. Now I want you to think, is this going to work? It will. If I drag down, what it's saying is take the cell 2 to the left of me and add it to the cell 1 to the left of me. So as we go down, it adjusts relative to its new position. We're in row 5 now. We're in row 6 now. We didn't have to do any kind of an absolute reference like on the tax rate. So I just wanted to show you the difference here. Fantastic. Let's save this. I'm clicking on the Save button in the upper left-hand corner. And now we can change our numbers around. So if the price of oranges goes up to $1.39, it will adjust not only that row formula and the tax and the total, everything will adjust every time I hit it. If the tax rate adjusts and we get a deal on the taxes, it will adjust everything. This is the whole point of using a spreadsheet, is to be able to put these formulas in and change things around and have it automatically calculate. You can add some more data to spreadsheets like these by simply inserting and deleting rows and columns. Maybe I was going through here and realized I had forgotten a couple of rows and wanted to add them in. It's super simple to do that. Let's say I had 3 different types of fruit that I wanted to add into this particular spreadsheet. I'm going to highlight 3 rows of information, and I'm going to right click in here and I'm going to choose Insert. And because I had highlighted 3 of them, it will automatically insert 3 rows. So again, I'm going to use my undo command to show that to you again. Edit and undo. So let's say I only wanted 2 rows. I'm going to highlight 2 rows, go into that highlighted range, right click, choose insert, and there we go. So now we can add some more in. Mangoes. Do I have apples in here? Let's put apples. And something to make it really easy, since this is very similar information, I'll just copy this information down and adjust it appropriately. So I'm going to highlight this range of cells because this is all the data that I need. And just grabbing onto that handle at the lower right hand corner, I'm going to drag that down. And now I can put in the appropriate price for the mangoes and the amount that I want. And I could put a different price in for the pears and a different amount that I want. And everything automatically adjusts. If I figured out that we're not selling pineapple anymore and I wanted to delete that row, I could easily do that by selecting the pineapple row. Again, I move into the highlighted area, right click my mouse and choose delete, and that will delete that row. It will adjust the pricing on here and everything is set. So again, to insert rows, highlight as many as you want, go into that highlighted range, right click, choose insert. I'm going to undo that. Or if you want to delete rows, you highlight whatever rows you want to delete, move into that highlighted range and delete them. And everything will adjust. Again, I'm hitting undo. Same thing with columns. If I wanted to insert a column, I would choose the column or multiple columns I wanted to insert. And I move into that highlighted range, right click and choose insert. If I want to delete them, I select them, move into that highlighted range, right click and delete. And everything adjusts. Okay, we're done with this file, so we're going to close it out. You can close it out in a couple of different ways. If you're on a Mac, you can click on the little red circle in the upper left-hand corner and that will close it. If you're in a Windows program, you'll find the X in the upper right, that will close it. Or you can always go to the File menu and click on Close. All of those options will work. So I'm going to close this file. If I had unsaved changes, it would prompt me to save them, which is a nice safety feature. All right, we're going to open up a new file. I'm going to go to File and Open. And I'm going to navigate on my Macintosh to the appropriate folder that contains my Excel data files. You'll need to do that too. It's probably in your Documents folder or on your desktop. I'm into Excel data files and I'm going to open up a file called Book List. I can either double click on Book List or I can click once and hit Open. Either way works. And I'm going to simply readjust this window so you can see everything that I'm working on. Again, you can adjust the zoom in the lower right hand corner here to make it comfortable for you to see. All right, so this is another example that we can use to practice our different formulas and functions and copying, and also discuss a little bit more about those absolute versus relative formulas. So this is a simple thing, a little spreadsheet, an inventory spreadsheet. This could be of any sort of inventory. And we have our item numbers here. These are just SKUs. These aren't actually being treated as numbers that are going to be calculated. We have our retail pricing, and we want to go through here and indicate a reorder amount. So let's just fill in some random numbers. It does not matter which numbers you fill in here. It's just an example. So I'm going to just fill in some random numbers. Notice as I'm typing the numbers in, because they are numbers, they are automatically right aligning. It's just a consistent thing with Excel. You can change that alignment later if you want, but most of the time in spreadsheets, when you type in a number, it's right aligned. The subtotal here, we simply want to figure out the subtotal, which is the retail price times the reorder amount. Very simple. I'm going to click here, just like we did before. we always start out our formulas with an equal sign. So I'm typing an equal sign, I'm clicking on the retail price, I'm using the multiplication sign, which is the asterisk, and then I'm clicking on the reorder amount. So retail price times reorder amount, pressing enter, and there we go, we have our subtotal. Now we can, of course, copy these down because for every single row, we simply want to take the retail price times the reorder amount. So as we've done before, we're going to wiggle our mouse around at the lower right-hand corner of that cell. The cursor turns from white to black. We hold down our little handle there, drag all the way down, and let go. And voila, all of these formulas are copied down. You can double check them by clicking in any of these cells and looking up here at the formula bar, and it will show you that yes, in fact, it's taking the retail price times the reorder amount, and you're getting the exact correct price. Now, let's change the formatting of these so they look prettier. I'm just going to highlight the subtotals here, and I'm going to come up here and click on the little dollar sign, and that will format those. And again, we'll talk more about different formatting and why, for instance, the retail price here looks different than this one. I'll come back and talk about formatting. Okay, so these are relative formulas. Relative formulas, again, means that when you copy these formulas, they adjust relative to their new position. Just to explain this again, I'm going to delete these. I'm going to highlight these and tap the delete key on my keyboard. That will get rid of those. And I'm going back to this original formula. When I double click here again, what it's really saying is take the cells 2 to the left of me, in this case it's in cell C5, and multiply it by the cell 1 to the left of me, which in this case is cell D5. They're still in row 5. You're simply taking the information from cell C and cell D. Pretty simple. So when I copy this down once by dragging that handle, it's adjusting relative to its new position. So in this case, it's saying, okay, I'm still taking the cell 2 to the left of me and multiplying it by the cell 1 to the left of me. And if you look at the reference, we have C6 times D6. It's simply adjusting relative to the new row that it's being copied to. And as we keep going, it's just going to continue to adjust down for the particular rows. Super simple. Okay, so that's the most basic thing that we're dealing with. And again, we talked about this a little bit in the previous spreadsheet. Okay, so just like before, we're going to play around with the taxes. I have a single cell up here that indicates tax rate. So I'm going to figure out the tax rate on each of these subtotals. To do this, I'm going to again start by clicking in the cell that I want the results of the formula to appear. I'm going to hit the equal sign, and I'm going to click in the subtotal cell. I'm taking this subtotal, multiplying it times the tax rate. So I used my little asterisk, and I'm coming up here and clicking on the tax rate cell and pressing enter, and voila, that is correct. And if I come up here for fun and I change the tax rate, that will automatically adjust. So that's great. So when I copy this down, you might expect that this would work, but watch what happens. Now you may wonder, what the heck is happening here? Well, we've talked about this before. Everything adjusts relative to its new position. So up here it's saying, take the cell 1 to the left of me and multiply it by cell B2, which is up here. It's kind of 3 up and 4 left. Okay, no problem. However, when I copied it down, it adjusted. So you'll see it's still taking the cell to the left of me, but now it's trying to jump up here and take the cell 1 row down, which is not what we want. We want it to go back up here and multiply by the tax rate cell, which is in cell B2. So we need to lock that in. It would be horrible if we had to do this by hand every single time that we tried to copy a formula around. Think about this as being a gigantic spreadsheet, maybe hundreds and hundreds of rows down. you have to be able to lock that tax rate cell in, so no matter where you copy it to, it always references cell B2. So luckily there's a way to do this. I'm hitting the escape key and I'm going to delete that formula that I just put in there. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going back to the original folder, or sorry, the original cell. And what we're going to do is we're going to lock in that cell B2. And you do this by putting dollar signs. This is creating an absolute reference. I'm locking in by putting a dollar sign before the column and a dollar sign before the row of the particular cell that I want. So what this is saying is take the cell to the left of me, cell E5, and allow that to adjust, no matter where I copy it to. But then I'm multiplying it absolutely always by whatever is in cell B2. So to show you how this works, when I press enter here, that's still correct, this still works fine. But when I grab that handle and drag down now, all of this works. If I double click on this, it's saying take the cell to the left of me, multiplying it by cell B2. Same here, same here. You'll see the first reference simply adjusts, it stays in column E, but adjusts like here's E8, E9, E10. So the first part of this formula adjusts relative to its new position, but the second part of the formula is locked in. Okay. Trust me, you'll use that a lot, and we'll use other examples of this. So now to establish the total, I'm simply going to hit the equal sign, and I want to take the subtotal plus the tax, and I can do this two ways. I can either hit subtotal plus tax, that would work, or I'm going to click back here and delete this. We can use our handy dandy auto sum command, this little sum command up here. Remember that sigma sign? When I click on this, it's going to look for the nearest adjacent range of cells that can be added up. Now, it's pretty smart. The first thing it will look for is the cells above it, and if it can't find any adjacent range of cells above it, it will look to the left. Now in this case, it's taking too many cells. It's simply seeing these as numbers. It's trying to grab all these numbers. So if you ever use the AutoSum formula and it doesn't grab the cells that you want, it's not a problem. Notice it fills in the formula equal sum and the parentheses, and the cells are highlighted. Whenever you see something highlighted in computers, you'll notice that it's waiting to be changed. So I don't have to hit delete. I don't have to do anything. I just need to start either clicking or typing, and it will change these highlighted references. So in this case, I only want to drag to highlight the subtotal and the tax, so the information in column E and column F. Okay, and I'm pressing enter. If I go back here, I can double check, make sure that works correctly. That is true. Now, when I copy this down, do I want this to adjust relative to its new position? Absolutely. I don't need to lock anything in here. I want to take the information in column E and column F in the particular row, so in this case row 5, and I want it to adjust. So I'm going to grab and drag that handle, and you'll notice now it's in column E6 and F6. Sorry, E7, F7, E8, F8. So it makes it super, super simple to create this. Now, the wonder of this is that I can go back here to the tax rate and I can adjust this to anything that I want, and it will adjust everything in this particular spreadsheet. It makes life so much easier. I can also go in and change reorder amounts, anything like that, and it will adjust the entire spreadsheet. So now just for fun, just to have a little bit of extra practice, I'm going to put a total line here, and I'm going to add up everything in each of these columns. That might be some useful information. So I'm going to total up the retail price using my AutoSum. I'm clicking where I want the result of this formula to appear. I'm clicking on AutoSum. Again, it's very smart. It looks straight up for the nearest adjacent range of cells, tries to grab them. If I'm happy with that, I could just press enter and it puts it in there. Now I could do that on each of these columns using the separate AutoSum, but that's not terribly efficient. This particular formula is correct. I just want to add up everything above me. So in this case, I'm going to grab the handle, drag to the right, and it's going to put it in there. If you don't trust me, whoops, you can double click, and there it is. You can double click, and there it is. So we're all good. Now, you might notice something quirky here, or a couple of quirky things. First of all, when you go and copy a formula, it's going to try to retain the formatting of the original cell. So for instance, when I copied this cell, this was formatted as a currency, and we'll talk about this, but with the dollar sign. In this case, the dollar sign's right next to the particular numbers. So when I copied this, all the formulas adjusted correctly, but you'll see that here we don't really want a dollar sign. We're trying to get a count of everything here. So let's talk about changing the formats, because you'll need to do this every once in a while. The most popular formats are actually up here under, or right here where it says currency, and then you have some different options. So most of the time you can just click on either the dollar sign if you wanted that, or percent, or comma. Comma allows you to put in a number without a currency sign, and it will use commas if it's in the thousands, and it will give you 2 decimal places. In this case, decimal places aren't appropriate for this particular column. So I'm making sure it's comma, and then next to this you have increase and decrease decimals. If I if I click twice on the decrease decimals, it gives me the decimal places that I want. So we might want to make sure all of this matches. You can highlight multiple ranges of cells and you can play around with different options. For instance, if I click on this little dollar sign, this will give me the accounting number format, and it will make sure that they all match. There, you can even change if you're doing euros or British pounds, that sort of thing. There are other options up here as well. You've got general, number, currency, accounting. Currency looks a little different. It pops the dollar sign closer to the numbers. I actually prefer that, but it's totally up to you. So you can do individual cells at a time, but most of the time you would highlight and make those changes all at once. Another way to make global changes and any kind of formatting changes is to highlight the cells that you want to format. Right-click in the center of the highlighted cells, and then choose Format Cells. In the Format Cells dialog box, it will give you all the same options as before, but you have even more choices. So for instance, if you were dealing with negative numbers, you could choose whether or not to have a minus sign appear in front of them, or have them in red or with parentheses. It doesn't matter. Now I wanted to mention this. Notice when these are numbers and they didn't come in right aligned, because these are general formatted numbers. We aren't going to use any calculations with these, so I didn't want any dollar signs or commas or anything like this. When you have numbers such as these, like phone numbers or address numbers, like street address numbers, you want these to be formatted as general. So I highlighted these earlier, and I formatted them, and I made sure they were general. There's no specific number format. Okay, so you can also do things like bold and underline and italicize. I'm going to click total here and just make this bold. You can also go through and change your font if you want. You would highlight the area that you wanted here. We have different font choices. We could make this awfully fancy. You can change the size of the font. You can change this font, just simply increasing and decreasing font sizes until you like them. But notice when I actually increase and decrease the font sizes, it actually can mess up the information in a particular column. Let me show you how to resize the columns to adjust for this. I'm just going to click to take off that highlight, and I'm going to adjust my zoom a little bit so you can see everything. Whenever you're working with columns and you want to adjust the sizing of your columns, you can come up here, and if you wiggle your mouse around, you'll see that if you go on the actual letter, you're going to get a down arrow. If I clicked once, that would select everything in that entire column all the way down to the very end. And you can do things like you can adjust the actual fill color. There's a fill option here if you wanted for some reason to have the entire column filled up. In my case, I don't want that, so I'm going to use my undo button. I believe I mentioned that earlier. Up here in the upper left-hand corner, we have a little left arrow. This is the undo option. That will undo the last item that, I'm sorry, if I click once, that will undo the last action that I just did previously. You can actually undo multiple steps if you keep clicking on undo. Undo will also always be in the edit menu. You will have the undo and redo options at the top of the edit menu. It's also good to memorize the Command Z or Control Z option if you're using Windows. Command and Control are the equivalents in Windows and Mac. So Command or Control Z is the undo command. Command or Control Y is the redo command. And you can use that in many different programs. So even if you're in PowerPoint or Word or you're working in your email program, you can use that Command Z and Command W to undo and redo commands. But back to formatting columns. When you wiggle your mouse around in between columns, like I have here in between columns B and C, you get a double-headed arrow. If you hold down your left mouse button and drag to the right, it will increase the size of the column. If you go to the left, it will decrease the size of the column. And if you double-click, it will automatically fit the widest entry in that particular column. So you can do that for any of these columns. Left, right, double-click. But what's actually kind of fun is to highlight multiple columns. So I'm simply going here in the middle of column B, next to the letter B, holding down my left mouse button, dragging to the right to highlight multiple columns. And when multiple columns are selected, I can go in between any one of the highlighted columns. So I could go between D and E or E and F, it doesn't matter. I wait until I get my double-headed arrow. I hold down my left mouse button, and if I drag to the right, it will make all of those columns that I had highlighted the same width, a little bit wider, or if I drag to the left, it will make them a little bit smaller, but all equally sized. But if I double click, it will go down and find the widest entry in the particular column, and it will fit that particular entry. So that's also a nice thing. So you can select multiple columns. You can do the same thing with rows. If you drag and highlight multiple rows, you can wiggle your mouse around between the numbers. In this case, I'm here between 5 and 6. I wait until I get my double-headed arrow. I drag down to increase the row height. I drag up to decrease it, and I double-click on it to fit the tallest item in that particular row. Now, what if you wanted everything on the spreadsheet? That's super easy as well. If I go up here to this box in the upper left-hand corner, it's above the number 1 and to the left of the column A header, and I click once, that will highlight every single column and cell and row and everything. So now I can go and make multiple changes to the entire worksheet. If I drag to the right, it makes everything the same width. If I drag to the left, it will make them all the same width. And if I double click, it will fit the widest cell in that particular column. Same thing with rows. I can drag down to increase the row sizes, drag up to decrease it, or double click to make it fit. So definitely play around with that. That is a great idea. So I'm going to, you can make just little tweaks here just to make things look nicer. You can also go through and change, you've got bold, italic, and underline at the upper left-hand corner here. You can highlight an area and set deliberate borders to be printed. This is the border option. You can do all borders, outside, inside, thick box. There's all kinds of, I'm just going to do outside borders here. And when you print this, you'll see how that looks. So this is a great way to make your spreadsheet look really nice. We have played around with our absolute and relative spreadsheet options. And next we will talk about printing. Okay, just to make sure we're all on the same page for this next section for printing, I'd like you to go ahead and close out any particular documents you may have open. Again, you can go up to File and choose Close, or you can click on the little red button if you're using a Mac, or the little X in the upper right hand corner if you're using Windows. And then I want you to open up a file that's called Book List Complete. So this will make sure we're all on the same page. So to do that, again, it's File, Open, navigate to the particular folder on your computer that has these program files, and you're going to open up Book List Complete. Okay, once you're here, this just has a clean version of what we were just working on. And I want to talk about printing. Printing is one of the most aggravating things about working with Excel. When you're working with Excel, you're working on what can potentially be extremely large files. And it does make sense that all of this data couldn't possibly fit onto one page or even fit correctly on multiple pages unless you do some important tweaking to the page setup and set up your printer or print dialog for success before you actually print it to your printer. So we want to print this simple spreadsheet. Really easy. I want to show you just what happens when you first go in and try to print something. I'm going to go up to the File menu and click Print. And when you come in here, it's going to show you a preview of what you're going to be printing. Now I know it's kind of hard to see, but the main thing I want to show you is that it is showing me that I want to print one of 2 pages. So this is going to put this information across 2 pages, which is not what I want. By default, it will have the orientation be a portrait orientation, which is straight up and down, versus sideways. So if I look here at the preview, this is how it's going to look. So it's important that you check out this preview before you send it to the printer, or you could potentially lose a lot of paper unnecessarily. I'm going to click on this little right arrow, and it's showing me the second page, which you can see has no identifying information up at the top or to the side, and so we'll wind up with a whole bunch of numbers that won't make any sense on the second page. So one of the first things that you can do to adjust this and to hopefully have this print out correctly is to change the orientation of the page. I'm going to come here, and there's a little button that looks like it's sideways. This print dialog box will look slightly different in Windows, but you'll see the same idea. So when I hit it sideways, it looks a little better. You can see more columns, but again, it's telling me I have 2 pages. So if I click on that little right arrow here, we're still going to wind up with a second page with a lot of numbers that don't mean anything to us. So actually, the best thing to do for a small spreadsheet like this is simply to scale it to fit, and there should be a scale to fit option on your screen. Again, this will look slightly different depending on the type of computer you are on, and it's going to show you it's going to scale to 1 page wide by 1 page tall. I'm going to have you open up a larger spreadsheet, and we'll talk more about printing larger spreadsheets in a little bit, but I just want you to see that you can trust what is on this screen here to show you what is exactly going to print. So if you like everything you see, don't do it now, but you could hit print and that will send it to your printer and everything should look fine. Well, I'm going to hit cancel because I'm not going to print this right now. Let's say you only wanted to print out a portion of your list. You actually didn't want all of this information. You can do what's called setting a print area. Let's say for some reason we only wanted to print out this area of our spreadsheet. So if you highlight the area that you want to print and go up to the File menu and choose Print Area, Set Print Area, it looks like nothing happens. But now, even if I click outside of that and leave it unhighlighted, I can go up to File and Print, and I know it's difficult to see, but it's only going to print that product name and the SKUs and the retail totals column. So this is nice. Okay, so for most of us, this is all we'd need for a simple spreadsheet like this. But what if we decided we wanted to come out and print all of it again, not just those first 3 or 4 columns? I'm going to hit cancel. So remember we had set up a print area of this area here. So I want to clear that. Under the File menu, you'll notice Print Area and Clear Print Area. Again, it looks like nothing happens, but if you go back to File and Print, you'll see that you have more columns here that are trying to print. And it remembered that I had the Scale to Fit option on. Again, if this wasn't turned on, it would split it over 2 pages and you'd have a second page that looks strange. So I'm going to make sure that that Scale to Fit option is on, and that's how you would print it. All right, I'm going to hit cancel, and that's all we are going to do with this particular spreadsheet. So let's go ahead and close that, either by going to File and Close or clicking on the Close buttons. And you can either save it or not, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to bother saving it because I didn't actually make any changes to it. Okay, just so we're all in the same place, if you have any of your worksheets open, go ahead and close those out and then open up the full file called Camp List. Again, it's under File and Open, and it should be in your Excel data files folder. Once you have this camp list open, just take a look at the spreadsheet. This is a simple list of students going to camp and the different deposits that they have put together. The total cost of the camp is $300, so it will show us the payments they have made, if any, and we're going to figure out a couple of things here. We're going to try to tie in everything that we have learned and create some absolute and relative cell references, and also print this file, and I'll show you how to print a larger file in this case. Okay, so I want you to notice this is actually quite a long file. And notice as you scroll down here, you are losing the column headings across the top. So I want to show you how you can lock in the column headings so that you don't lose them as you're moving around on your screen. Now this has nothing to do with printing. This is simply locking down the column headings while you're moving around on the screen. I'll show you later on how to apply headings to your actual printouts. So when you are trying to figure out what columns to lock down, we simply want to look for the columns that contain the headings. So in this case, we want to make sure that all of this information stays no matter where we scroll around on the screen. So you do need to highlight or place your cursor underneath the row, in this case, that contains the column headings. So this is how we're indicating where our column headings are going to be. I'm going to go up here under the View menu. Actually, I take that back, under the Window menu, and I'm going to choose Freeze Panes. Window and Freeze Panes. Looks like nothing happened, but it is now taking everything above the row that we have selected. Notice I've selected Kevin's row here. And when I scroll down, no matter where I go now, we can see the headings for these particular columns. So this is an important thing. You're going to stumble upon this quite often. If you wanted to freeze the rows so that even if we went over here, we could tell what information this or correlated to in the first couple columns, we could lock the rows. So I'm going to select column C here because I want everything to the left of me to be locked in. I'm going to go to Window, and I'm going to do Unfreeze Panes, and then I'm going to freeze the panes again. Window and Freeze Panes. So now if I go to the right, no matter where I go, that is locked in. But notice something. If I scroll down, those headers go away. So if you want to lock in both the columns and the rows so that they don't go away no matter where you scroll around, you need to click in the cell that is underneath the rows that you want and to the right of the columns that you want. In this case, that particular cell is cell C5. So I'm saying lock up or freeze everything above me and everything to the left of me. So by clicking here, I'm going to go up to Window. I'm going to unfreeze the panes because I had them frozen before. I leave my cursor in cell C5. I go back up to Window and I choose Freeze Panes. Now, no matter where I go down, it's locked, and no matter where I go to the right, it's locked. It's kind of a cool thing. That takes a little practice. And at any time, you can always go back up to Window and unfreeze panes. In our case, I'll just leave it. Okay, so let's play around with this. We want to figure out our deposit subtotals. So we want to add up the amount of the first, second, and third camp deposits. So again, I'm starting in the cell where I want the result of the formula to appear. I'm going to use my little auto sum, my little sigma sign up here. I'm going to click once. It's very smart. It doesn't see anything above it, so it goes to the left and grabs the nearest adjacent range of cells, and it sums them up. So super easy. I'm going to press enter. And I simply want to copy this formula down. So I'm clicking here and I'm going to drag and drag and drag and drag. And I'll keep going, but I just wanted to show you something. You can always double check. This formula is saying take the 3 cells to the left of me and add them up. Take the 3 cells to the left of me and add them up. So it's adjusting relative to its new position. So I'm going to continue to copy this down. I'm just going to click on the bottom cell here, grab the handle, and I'm just going to drag and scroll and keep going because there's 285 rows here. And when I let go, again, just like before, it's taking these 3 cells. Super simple. Okay. Now, we want to figure out, based on these subtotals, who has a balance still due. So I'm going to again click here in the cell where I want the result of the formula to appear. And I simply want to take the camp costs minus the deposit subtotal for each of these campers. So I'm going to click here, press the equal sign to start off our formula. I'm saying take the subtotal, so the cell to the left of me, and I apologize, that was incorrect. I want to start by hitting the equal sign. I want to take the total camp cost, so the information in cell B2, and then I want to subtract the subtotal here in the cell to the left. So in this case, it's in cell K5. And I press enter, and we still have a balance due of $185 for this particular person. Okay, so remember, take a look at this. It's taking the cell to the left and it's taking the camp cost and subtracting the deposit subtotal, which is the cell to the left. So I'm just going to copy this down. I'm going to click here. I'm going to grab my handle. I'm going to drag down and watch what happens. Nope, doesn't work. Now remember as to why this happened. So let me delete these guys. Actually, I'm going to click in the cell below and show you what's happening. The first cell is saying take cell B2 and subtract the cell to the left of me. But when it adjusts relative to its new position and goes down one row, it's saying take cell B3 minus the cell to the left. And then cell B4. And then cell B5. And it keeps adjusting down here. We don't want that. So instead of doing that, I'm going to delete these guys, highlighting it, tapping my delete key. I'm going to go back to this original formula. I'm going to lock this in. We want to make sure that it absolutely always draws from cell B2, no matter where I copy it. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to double click to adjust this formula. I'm going to lock these in by typing a $sign before the letter B to lock that in, and before row 2. So I have equals B, $B, $2 minus K5. So locking in cell B2, but leaving the cell to the left relative. So that will adjust. Pressing enter. Now if I click here and I grab that handle and I drag down, this all works. And you can double click and just see that no matter where I copy these two, it locks in cell B2, but it adjusts the row number in column K. So it's saying B2 minus K6, B2 minus K7, B2 minus K8. So that's that absolute cell reference I was talking about. You lock it in by putting the $signs there. So now I can drag this all the way down, and if I keep dragging, it will fill these all in. And voila, even all the way down here, it's saying take cell B2 minus cell K284. All right, so this is a very relevant type of spreadsheet. This is something that you will wind up using quite often. Okay, so now we're going to print this. So again, remember the freezing panes that I did before have nothing to do with how this prints. It just has to do with when you're scrolling around on your screen, you don't lose those important column and row headings. So we're going to have to arrange that when we go back in. So I'm going to show you if we just went to print, file, print. You're going to have, in this particular thing, it's going to try to spread this data out amongst 12 pages. We have page 1 of 12, 2 of 12. See how we're losing the column headings? And if you keep clicking, eventually you're going to lose the row and column headings. And so you'd have all of these pages full of numbers that mean nothing to anybody. So we have a couple of different options here. I'm just going back to page 1. The one that we did before was to scale to fit. Now in this case, I could play around with changing the orientation to portrait and landscape. But in this case, I'm going to leave it as portrait because it's such a long list. And I'm going to scale to fit this to 1 page wide. Notice it tries to go 1 page wide by 1 page tall, but it would make it minuscule. You'd have itty bitty text here that you couldn't possibly read. So I want to scale it to 1 page wide, and I'm just going to guess. I'm just going to put like 10 pages tall. Overestimate the number of pages tall, because if you indicate that you just want it 1 page wide, it will automatically calculate based on this particular set of data. So we have 1 of 3, but notice page 2 and 3 don't have our column and row headings. So you'll wind up with a bunch of data that means nothing, even though it only fits on 3 pages. So we'll play with that. Another way to make this look a little bit better is if, again, I switch to portrait. That would give us a little more room. It's still fitting 1 page wide. And again, I overestimated the pages tall. In this case, this would be 6 pages. But it would be, the first page would be relevant. All of the rest of the pages wouldn't have the appropriate column headings. So we need to fix this. Now, unfortunately, you can't fix this from within the print dialog box. We need to go to page setup. So I'm going to hit cancel. Okay. So in page setup, which is under the file menu and page setup, this is where you can really tweak what you're trying to do. So in our case, it remembered that I was trying to fit it to 1 page wide by 10 pages tall, and I had chosen landscape. So that's a good place to start. I'm also going to go up here under margins. You can adjust your margins here. You can play around with them. You're going to want to have at least a 1/4 inch margin all the way around because most printers can't print to the very edge of the page. I'm going to leave these as is. You can also do headers and footers if you want. They have some preset ones, like if you wanted to have the name of the file at the very top. I'm choosing the name of the file here. You can choose a custom footer like page 1 of however many pages. This is kind of nice. And you can play with different options here. But the sheet options is actually what we really want. We don't have to set our print area because we want to print the entire spreadsheet. If we only wanted to print a section of our spreadsheet, we would have to click on this little button here and go back and decide where, or drag and highlight the area that we wanted to print. But the main thing that we want to make sure of is that we have appropriate print titles. We want to indicate that we want certain rows to repeat at the top and columns to repeat at the left. For this particular spreadsheet, all we're worried about is that we have everything in row 4, all of these descriptive column headings. We want those to print on every single page. So the way to do this is I'm going to click on this little, it's called a range selector, this little button here. And it's jumping me back out to the spreadsheet, and I'm telling the computer I want everything to print in row 4. Okay, and it puts the little $4 $4 in here. I know that might be a little hard to see, but I just selected row 4. It's showing me by my little dancing ants, that little selection area, that that's what I've chosen. And when I go back and click on this little button again, this little range selector, it brings me back into this page setup dialog box, and it shows me that I'm repeating only row 4. I could also be very exact and choose the columns to repeat at the left. This won't affect anything for this particular spreadsheet, but it's kind of a nice thing to know about. I'm clicking on this range selector. And in this case, I would want everything in rows A and B. Notice it says $A, $B to repeat. I'm clicking on the range selector again. This is also where I can choose grid lines if I wanted to make sure I had grid lines throughout my spreadsheet when I printed it, and some other different options. So in this case, I'm going to click on OK, and it looks like nothing happened. However, when I go back into File and Print now, it will have remembered that we were using a portrait. We wanted to scale to fit 1 page wide by 10 pages tall. But now, if you look here, it's really tiny. You can see I put a little header and footer, and I have the column headings here. Also on the 2nd page and the 3rd page and the 4th page, I would have these column headings, so no matter what printed out, it would look correct. Now, just to demonstrate what this would actually look like, I'm not going to hit print. I'm going to show this to you in PDF. PDF document is simply a printout back on the screen. It's a great way to be able to print something and then to email it to someone. Your dialog box, again, will look a little bit different. It will work a little differently if you are on a Mac versus a PC, but you should have an option to be able to save it as a PDF file. On my Mac, in the lower left-hand corner, I can open PDF in Preview. So this will allow me to show you what this actually would look like. So you can now see what the summer camp screen would look like. And notice this is page 1. It has the title and the column headings and the header and the footer. Notice on the footer, it actually says page 1 of 5. It calculated the number of pages and put that in there for us. I'm going to hit page 2 now. And again, it remembered everything in that row 4 so that no matter what page we go to, it will repeat that. And so we can see that. So this is something that takes practice. I'm going to close out of our little PDF viewer here and go back to Excel. But the bottom line is, when you go to print, the first thing you do is, no matter what you have set up, just look at it under File, Print. Take a look at your print preview. Trust what is there. If you want to play around, you can do the orientation of the portrait and landscape. I would highly suggest scaling to fit. Normally you do the 1 page wide and you can overestimate the pages tall. It will adjust. And if it still doesn't look the way you want and you want to lock down column headings, you can cancel out of this, go back up to File, Page Setup, jump over here to the sheet, and make sure to indicate the rows to repeat at top by clicking the range selector and choosing the appropriate row. In this case, if I wanted to adjust this and I wanted to make sure the title repeated on every page, I could drag from row 1 to 4 and then close back out here. And I'll show you what that does. I'm going to hit OK. And then I'm going to go to File, Print. And notice here on page 1, I have the title and all of my columns. And because I locked in that row 1 through 4, now on page 2 and page 3, you'll see I have those up here. And even if I look at it in preview, you'll see that on every page it repeats the title and the columns because the column headings, because I chose all of row 1 through row 4 to print. Before we're done with this particular document, I want to show you some quick ways to sort these sorts of documents itself, because especially when you have hundreds of rows of data, you're going to want to sort it in different ways. So what we're going to do is we are going to play around with sorting first by last name, then by balance and that sort of thing. Sorting's pretty easy. When you have a spreadsheet set up correctly, the sort command will actually read and determine the area that should be sorted. So for instance, what I mean by correctly, when you have column headings, you want to have column headings that are not running into anything above them. Excel determines a spreadsheet by the column headings and anything below them, but if we had something right above the column headings, it would get confused. So you want to give at least 1 row of blank space above your column headings. Once you set it up this way and you have your column headings and then of course no blank rows. You don't want any blank rows in a particular spreadsheet because it will determine that blank row as the end of the spreadsheet. So in this case, if I want to do a simple sort, I can click once anywhere in the last name column. It doesn't matter, anywhere in the last name column, and go up to the data command, and you have a couple of sort options here. In this case, if I just wanted to sort first by last name, I can just click in the last name column anywhere there and watch the area that it highlights when I click this. See, it jumped and it highlighted that area. Let's see if you can see that again. You'll see this whole area being highlighted. There's no way for me to slow that down. I'm going to sort Z to A, so descending order in the last name, and see how it automatically applies to the entire spreadsheet from below these column headings. This has nothing to do with my freeze headings. It just simply is because I have typed in column headings that are separated by a blank row above it. We could have multiple blank rows, you just have to have at least one blank row. So again, the easiest way, if I want to sort by last name in ascending order, I just click anywhere in the last name column and hit the little A to Z. If I want it in descending order, I can hit Z to A. This would also work if I want to go in the balance still due. Oh, by the way, you want to click in any one of these cells that has a filled cell. So for instance, if I wanted to sort it by camp deposit number 3, there's a bunch of people that have not paid for this camp deposit number 3. But if I wanted to sort by it, I would want to click on a filled cell, not a blank cell. So I'm going to click here and then watch, I'm hitting A to Z again, and it does it correctly, or Z to A. But you don't want to click on a blank cell. If I want to click here for balance still due, I can click anywhere, A to Z, Z to A, real simple. But if I wanted to get more specific, like let's say I knew I wanted to sort this by last name, but I had multiple people with the same last name. I'm not sure if that's true with this particular spreadsheet, but just in case. I can click here, actually anywhere on a filled cell in this particular spreadsheet. And instead of doing the A to Z and Z to A, I'm going to click on sort. And this allows us to go in and make sure that we're sorting exactly the way we want. In my case here, I am indicating that my list has headers. That's those column headings up at the top there. You want to, in most cases, you want to make sure that that is on, because then when you come here and you say sort by, in my case, I want to sort by last name. I'm going to hit last name. If by, just to show you, if I turn this off, it would give me column headings, or the entire column, not just that spreadsheet. So in my case here, I want to do my list has headers. I want to sort by last name. But I also then, after sorting by last name, I want to add a level. And then I want to sort by first name. You can control the order A to Z or Z to A. And I'm going to click on OK. Now, see, I have more than one person named Barker, more than one person named Bennett, and it's sorting alphabetically by first name within that. Let's say I wanted to sort by city, and then alphabetically by last name within city. I can do that. I just hit sort. I want to sort by city, then by last name, and I'm going to add one more level, then by first name. And I can sort it. So it's great. And then when you print, it will print exactly as you see it on the screen. So in this situation, I would suggest, let's say we're wanting to print out a list of just the kids who have balances still due. So I'm going to sort by balance still due. Balance still due. Then by last name, then by first name. But I want to sort the balance still due by the largest balance so that I can see which kids still have a balance due. I don't need to look at the kids that have a 0 balance due. I want to look at the ones that have the largest balance due. So now I have all the kids with the balance due organized in that list. And just to show you another practical idea of using the print areas, we could print this whole report. We could maybe we're trying to print this out for the camp director, but all we are really interested in is the kids that we want to get in touch with because they have a balance due. So rather than printing out every single one of them, if I simply come down and highlight just the kids that have a balance due up here, and I go to File, Print Area, Set Print Area, that way it's only going to print these records. There's no reason to print a report with the kids that have 0 balances. So now if I go to File, Print, notice I only have 4 pages here because I had 5 before. And now this will only print the kids who have a balance due, and it's sorted by last name. Or I'm sorry, it's sorted first of all by the amount of the balance due and then by last name. Okay, that's about it. Thank you so much for hanging with me for this Excel Level 1. I hope you have learned a lot. I really hope you've enjoyed this class. I'm not just a computer trainer, I'm also a website designer. If you're in the market for professional website design, please check out my website at mtcweb.co. If you're a do-it-yourselfer, you can also find a great do-it-yourself website builder at my site easywebsitebuilder.co. And I also have a fun blog called geekymomsocal.com, where you'll find some practical tips and tricks for living with technology in your everyday life. I hope you'll check them out. Thanks so much.